thank you to all of our 100% Talent Compact signers for joining us today, and particularly our anchor signers, Arbella Insurance, Mass General Brigham, Mass Mutual, State Street, Vertex, and our newest anchor, Beth Israel Leahy Health. Yay! For your amazing generosity and support, we couldn't do these events without you. This is our 4th annual Wage Equity Impact Awards, and formerly known as the Innovative Initiative Awards. So why did we change the name? Well, because we started to think that what it takes to close gender and racial wage gaps isn't always that innovative. You will see some ideas today that are outside of the box, so you can be assured of that. But what ties them all together is the perseverance and intentionality that our winners have shown in their efforts to really keep at this issue. As we've said to many of you, there is no silver bullet to closing gender and racial wage gaps. What works for one company might not work at another due to a difference in culture, leadership, accountability. We do hope, however, today you take away one idea to test at your organization and see if it brings you success, and then enter it in our next competition. We had a tremendous number of applications this year, making it very hard to choose winners. In the end, we are recognizing 6 compact signers whose winning practices fall into 2 different categories. So we have 2 different panels. First is transformation over time, and the second is redefining industry standards. As you know, we partner with Mayor Wu in our efforts to close gender and racial wage gaps, and today we are lucky to have Mayor Wu's Chief People Officer, Alex Lawrence, in attendance to help give out the awards. Can you join me on the podium, please, Alex? Okay, so winners. When we call your organization's name, please come up here to accept your award. Once we've announced all the winners, we'll start with the first panel. But we're also going to do a picture, I think, right, with me and the winner and Alex. Okay. Also, before I forget, today's panel moderator is Crystal Haynes, who you all may know from her years as host on WGBH's programs Greater Boston Basic Black. She is currently the Senior Communications Director for the United Way of Massachusetts, a part-time lecturer at Northeastern, and a board member at the March of Dimes. So thank you. All right, let's start with our winners. Sun Life Financial, using technology to advance the commitment to pay equity. Accepting, come on, how do you want this? Sure. Accepting the award is Laura Wells, Associate Vice President of the Award at Sun Financial. So why don't you go on that side? And great, thank you. The Bullfinch Companies. And their award is for Advancing Women Team Members. Accepting the award is Pamela Yang, Managing Director and Chief Operating Officer.
Can you stand up?
You want the rest of your team to stand?
Up, please.
Woo!
That's our
All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
The next award is given to Trillium Asset Management, setting the standard for wage equity. Accepting the award is Matt Patsky, Trillium's Chief Executive Officer. Thank you. Next award goes to, oh, you're so smart. Okay. I know, that's what you got to where you did. Charlestown Nursery School, Crushing Industry Norms. Accepting the award is Katie Audit, co-director. Hi, Katie. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you, too. next award goes to State Street Corporation, Driving Transparency and Equity for the Long Term. Accepting the award is Allison Ruggieri, Managing Director of Organization Design.
Thank you. I did.
And last but not least, Demella Schaefer, Diversifying Leadership and Staff. Accepting the award is Cipriano Galveo, Director of Human Resources. Thank you. And with that, yes, I think we'll start our congratulations to our 2024 award recipients. And as I mentioned up front, we have two panels today, divided by which category the initiative falls. So we're going to start with the transformation over time and ask that the representatives from State Street, Trillium, and Sun Life join our moderator on the podium. And then we're going to reserve, I hope this works, we were going to reserve 10 minutes at the end of each panel for Q&A. So please raise your hands and one of the BWWC staff will come around with a microphone for you.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. There we go. Where's the energy? Good afternoon. I'm Crystal Haynes. Thank you so much for the warm welcome here. You may know me from, I was at Boston 25 News as the weekend morning anchor for 13 years and then went on to GBH, and you all know about the layoffs on the TV division there. So, but very happy to be at the United Way and excited to uplift the amazing organizations that are being honored here today. So let's get this started. I want to introduce you all to our panelists a little bit. And while I am sure that their accolades could go pages and pages long, we want to be thoughtful of your time. Laura Welts is the AVP of Total Rewards, a human resources professional with 25 years of diverse HR experience. Laura has been employed at Sun Life for over 6 years as the compensation lead for the U.S. business and is a member of Sun Life's Global Total Rewards leadership team. In addition to compensation, Laura recently added retirement and savings to her mandate. Laura has expertise in designing innovative solutions and compensation strategies for mergers and acquisitions, talent attraction, and retention. Well, Matt Patsky is CEO and lead portfolio manager of the Trillium ESG Global Equity Strategy. Matt has over 4 decades of experience in investment research and investment management. He began his career at Lehman Brothers back in 1984 as a technology analyst. In 1989, while covering emerging growth companies for Lehman, he began to incorporate environmental, social, and governance factors into his research. And last but not least is Allison Ruggieri, a managing director in global human resources and corporate citizenship for State Street. She leads organization design efforts for the enterprise, of course they probably have expertise, but enterprise providing consulting services to ensure functions are organized to achieve their strategic priorities. She also serves as subject matter expert in the area of human capital analytics, including pay equity. Welcome to you all. All right, yes. I'm so thoughtful of all of the work that each of your organizations have been doing to create pay equity, close that wage gap. And I wondered if you each could briefly share the practices or the policies that you implemented in your organization to achieve success in these spaces. And I'll start with you.
Great, thank you. We've been doing pay equity analysis at Sun Life for a number of years, and the process that we've gone through has evolved, and we've tried a lot of different things over time to really find that sweet spot of making progress with the commitment of our leadership. And we've tried everything, right, from different systems, trying to create an in-house system, doing the work manually, and most recently we were able to partner with another company and implement a new system to help us really advance the work. It's been quite a learning, right? This is a whole new area for many compensation and total rewards professionals to really understand the data underneath pay equity differences. And so with the support of leadership, we've made significant progress over the past, I would say, 4 years. And with the implementation of this system, we're actually able to identify the specific pay gaps that are attributable to protected characteristics for our employees. So it's kind of getting at that next layer down and really understanding what we can do to close those gaps.
Trillium started pushing for a analysis and understanding of gender pay equity gaps and asking companies to solve or start to implement plans to close that gap in 1982. So just to give you some history, the firm was founded by a woman. The majority of the employees were women in 1982. We remain majority women. And basically, gender pay equity was one of the founding principles the firm was founded on. So we started to realize after I joined almost 15 years ago, and we started to realize we should be asking the same question of ourselves. And we started about a decade ago doing a gender pay equity analysis and found at the time there was no statistical significant difference in the gender pay. Our call to companies is there is a gender pay gap. We know the gender pay gap is very broad-based in terms of industries across U.S. and multinationals, and that we're asking you to acknowledge that, we're asking you to look at it, and then we're asking you to come up with a plan to close it. Salesforce was probably one of the most amazing stories because we asked for it before, and we normally would use a shareholder proposal if we're not getting positive response from the company. But in the case of their CEO, he immediately responded with, "We'll do that right now." He did it, he announced it, and then he closed it within 6 months, right? They discovered, I think it was a 3% pay gap, and so they literally set up a plan of action to close the pay gap in a very quick period. In our case, we found that we didn't have, and this is an embarrassing reality for us, we didn't have a large enough BIPOC population to be able to run anything with statistical significance to look at whether or not we had a racial pay equity gap. In the most recent 2023, we did, because we've succeeded in getting to almost 30% of our workforce being BIPOC. And so we did find that there was no statistical difference based on race, based on characteristics on race or ethnicity. We did this year find the first time a wage gap based on gender that was statistically significant. We are paying our women 5% more than men. Now, what I will add to that is understand a big component of our compensation system does include performance relative to benchmark for our investment professionals. And women outperformed men, not surprisingly to the people in the room, last year relative to benchmark in a more significant way than historical, and it resulted in comp packages on average going down for men and up for women, which gave us this slight wage disparity. So it's explainable based on performance, so we're okay with where it ended up, but it is there was a statistically significant difference for our first time running this in a decade. So, thanks.
Hi. So State Street's been running pay analyses for, I think, almost 10 years. But what we've been doing, at least for the last 8 or so, is looking at a suite of policies that we can implement to support pay equity. So for instance, in 2017, we created a policy of prohibiting asking about compensation history for all candidates, because we know that it disproportionately impacts men and employees of color negatively. In 2020, we expanded the remit of our human capital board to include diversity. We wanted to have a forum to share that data and track our progress, but also hold our leaders accountable for what progress they're making. In 2020, we implemented in 2022, we started publishing our unadjusted and adjusted pay gaps publicly for the first time. And then last year, we started publishing our pay ranges for all job recs, so candidates can go in, sort of complementary to that policy about not asking about compensation details, understanding what the market thinks that job is worth, and really creating a equal forum for employees of color and females.
Remarkable. You know, in the case studies that we have for all of the folks who are being honored, you know, no pay gap between women or professionals of color. And we also are seeing no gender gap in wages here. The amazing annual publishing of the pay in different groups are also very important. I'm thoughtful of if you felt like it impacted the way you do business or your competitiveness in each of your markets by being so transparent about closing this wage gap and closing these equity gaps. And I'll start with you again, Laura.
I would say for Sun Life, it very much aligns with our culture. It's truly an amazing organization. I know there are lots of companies who say they do certain things in terms of fairness and internal equity. I would say compared to any other organization that I've been a part of, at Sun Life, we really do sort of, you know, talk the talk, walk the walk. Our leadership is a very significant portion of why we've been so successful in advancing, right, and closing those gaps. And I would also say, you know, when we look at pay equity, it's not a one and done. It's something that needs to be committed to over time. The population's always changing, things are always moving. And we have support from the top. Our president of the United States business is incredibly supportive. Our entire executive team is very supportive. Both from a philosophical perspective of doing the right thing, and also from a financial perspective of actually making the investment, not only in a system to help us do this work, but also to actually impact employee salaries where there are gaps. So from a cultural perspective, I feel like it really just sort of threads the needle in terms of what Sun Life is all about and what it feels like to work there. And it just makes sense. It just fits with who we are. I know that might sound a little corny, but it is very true.
Yeah. I'm always interested if whether it affects your competitiveness in your markets, right? Like, you know, wanting to be able to.
Yeah, I would say I think it does because we have very, very low attrition. So that's one factor. I would also say pay transparency is a really big part of I think what would lend itself to having a competitive edge within the market. We are transparent with our employees. Employees can see, you know, information about their pay, their range of pay, et cetera, and it kind of all feeds into ensuring that there's more transparency and equity within the organization.
I would say it is definitely helpful in talent recruitment and retention. And in terms of our business, increasingly there's attention being paid to DEI issues, and we're seeing actually a campaign called 30 by 30, calling for people to have 30% of their money managed by diverse portfolio management teams by 2030. While that doesn't seem like a very ambitious goal, it's less than 10% now. For us, 100% of our assets are managed by diverse teams. And we do see wins, institutional wins for mandates where they've identified the diversity of our portfolio management team for the reason they selected us over our competitors.
For State Street, I would say that as part of the RFPs that we receive and bid on, we're often getting questions on diversity and pay equity. And they want folks that can answer these questions in the bid process. So we've really had to, one of the reasons why we are so transparent in our pay and we've published our pay gaps is because our clients are asking for that.
Great. I guess, you know, with the success of the programs you've already implemented, are there anything else that you plan on putting into practice here?
I have lots of ideas. So two things come to mind. One is just to go on with the transparency piece. You know, we all do what's required by law in terms of posting salary ranges for jobs. So we're continuously looking at how we advance that transparency in places where it's not required to really create an even playing field, not only for external people who are considering coming to work at Sun Life, but also for our internal employees as well. The other piece with this tool that we have that we've been sort of thinking, what is the roadmap? Where do we go from here? Is thinking about how we might be using that at the time of hire, which is a very different practice for us. You know, we have a very strong talent acquisition team. They work very closely, you know, with leaders to put together competitive offers for folks. But you know, they don't necessarily have access to the data that we have access to in terms of understanding pay across the entire organization. And so one of the areas that we're probably going to be looking at as we move forward is how might we use this system to really help us when people are entering the organization so that we are, you know, sort of doing the right thing from the beginning versus needing to, you know, remediate decisions that were made at hire.
One of the things that we've changed over the past 10 years is our recruitment process, making sure we're more intentional about reaching beyond our traditional networks to try to make sure that we are getting a more diverse candidate pool. And so just as an example, we now post all of our job openings at HBUs, particularly entry level, because one of the ways in which the industry is going to end up more diverse is by making sure that entry-level positions are being posted and drawing in more people of color, more women into the field, because there is you know, a problem that's been created over 100 years of there being too many processes where it's reaching to communities like themselves, the senior white men reaching out to hire people who look like them and have the same history as them, right, for those entry-level jobs. And so it's trying to break that cycle.
It's a global company, so as Laura said, like a lot of what we're doing is maybe pushing things forward in areas where the requirements aren't as stringent or they're not as advanced. So things that are common in the U.S., like publishing pay ranges, maybe aren't so common in places like India. So what we're doing this year is we're going to be publishing our pay ranges across all 30 plus countries that we operate in, and you know, just looking to increase transparency across the globe.
Perfect. So now we're going to move into your questions. Does anyone have questions for our panel here?
We've all been talking about pay, but of course, an important element in dealing with the wage gap is moving people up within the organization and how people are evaluated and what sort of jobs they're thought to be good for, that they're recruited for, and then paying them according to, you know, what is the right salary for that job. Could you talk a little bit about how you've thought about progression in addition to how you hire people?
So as Matt said, a lot of times the recruitment up at the senior levels tended to be offline and wasn't put through a competitive process. In 2020, we required that senior level roles go through that process, and we have a diverse slate. So until a diverse slate is met, we would continue the recruitment process. The feedback from employees that we got was that they liked that process and they wanted to really expand it. So just this year, we pushed that out to also mid-level mid-level roles. Because we do see that representation is very equal down at the entry-level roles, but the promotion rates may differ so that, over time, the advancement of different groups is different. And therefore, we realize representation is very important.
I can also add to that. So we also have diverse slates that we utilize for recruiting. It's at all levels within the organization. And a little bit different, I think I would say that we have a more diverse population at lower levels within our organization. And the diverse slates apply whether it's for internal recruiting or external recruiting. And so we've seen a tremendous growth in the percentage of our population within Sun Life that is diverse, female, and we continue to focus on internal efforts to ensure that we're providing the right development opportunities, the right performance assessment opportunities in terms of calibration, and special projects is kind of a big thing. So how do people get assigned to different projects? How are they selected? And so all of those things are very much a focus for our HR team in terms of, again, it's kind of thinking about sort of the life cycle of the employee and kind of how all of the things that happen during that life cycle really contribute to them being able to advance within the organization.
To try to look at that, of course, we do just a raw number comparison to look at what was the total pool of the employee base that are female versus male. And that came out as statistically insignificant, which means we have done a great job. And if you look at our website, you can see why, because there's lots of senior women in leadership roles. And we did it also based on BIPOC and found that there was no difference either. And that is incredible credit to the last 6 years of work we've done in trying to recruit in more people of color and more women, more people of color predominantly into senior roles. So that's a good way to do it, and it's, of course, the way BWWC recommends it be looked at, which is it's since we became a signatory that we started looking at it that way, and it's been very helpful to see that gap has been closed.
Thank you. You guys are just fabulous how you discuss in public. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Leslie Ford from Moms Hierarchy of Needs. I've loved this conversation. I often work with organizations to retain parents and caregivers, and disproportionately policies tend to impact women and women's trajectories. One of the things that comes up within the organizations that I work with is just kind of who gets tapped for the promotion, like who just gets tapped on the shoulder versus who has to be vetted and prove themselves and jump through hoops. So I'm just curious, with the transparency of pay, has it changed or opened a conversation around what steps need to be taken to be promoted, and has it kind of shifted the way you look at promotability?
Well, we just went through a process of changing our promotion process so that it's actually, we're posting all roles, particularly for our mid-level and above. At the lower levels, we need to move them up the ranks more quicker. And we did that because we wanted folks to seek out opportunities for advancement. And so, the promotion process can often feel like it is, you're being tapped on the shoulder, and it's based off of one manager's preference. But in addition to this posting process, we have a panel process, so there's multiple people involved in that process going forward.
I would say similar. We post all of our roles. It's very rare that we don't, which gives everyone, I think, an opportunity to put themselves forward for those roles, and it can even be within a department. So oftentimes there are several people who might be ready for the next step within a particular group, and posting their job alleviates the tap on the shoulder. So I think that we've been able to make some good progress there.
I would just say we now post all jobs, but that is a change for us because we're a small organization, 50 people. I can tell you historically there were plenty of promotions within that did not involve posting the job. Now we require posting the job in all cases.
Excellent. Well, thank you all for your time. This panel was transformation over time. And so now we're going to reset with 3 more folks for our redefining industry standards. Please give them a round of applause. Thank you so much. Alrighty, so you may or may not have to turn your mics on. You just flip the little button up. So as we transition into our second panel, redefining industry standards, I want to introduce you to our panelists here. Katie Audette has decades of experience working as a teacher and an administrator in independent schools. She has a BS from Boston University and a master's in education from Lesley University with a focus on creative arts and learning. Recently, she was part of the first cohort of early childhood leaders at the Saul Zanes, is that how you pronounce it? Zanes, thank you, education initiative at Harvard. Cipriana Galvao, is that right? Did I get it right? Okay, all right, here we go. Is the Director of Human Resources at DeMilla Schaefer, where she leads the people operations at the firm. At the heart of Cipriana's mission is the belief that every individual should thrive in their professional environment, regardless of background or identity. With this ethos driving her work, she leads DeMilla Schaefer's diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts by implementing strategies to cultivate a culture of belonging where all employees feel valued and respected. Pamela Yang is an award-winning professional and thought leader with more than 3 decades of experience in the financial services and commercial real estate industries. As managing director and COO at Bullfinch, Pamela oversees daily operations, including guiding strategic planning, providing oversight of the firm, and working closely with the financial reporting team and Bullfinch leadership. In addition, Pamela serves as the Chief Investment Officer for the firm's family office. Please, a round of applause for the panelists here. Since we've sort of switched focus here, I would also ask the same question to all 3 of you in terms of describing the practices and policies that you put in place that you've found effective in closing that wage gap and creating more equity. And I'll start with you, Pamela.
Great. Thank you for having me. Is this on? Should be. Okay. Can you hear me? Perfect. So diversity and inclusion and hiring women team members has always been the practice of the firm, obviously, but we transformed it from a mere business practice into a more purposeful, intentional effort as a part of a DEI effort that we do. So, and what we're is it? Oh, so much better. Yeah. So every day I learn something new. So what I'm saying is that we turned into a more purposeful and intentional effort. And what we're focusing on is that commercial real estate industry is a very male-dominated industry. But if you look at the industry itself and then looking at the different buckets of work, it's not really evenly kind of like distributed. You know, for example, there are 2 areas. One is property management area, where you go to a property and you have a staff office and managing the building. It's very male dominated. So that's one area. Another area is acquisition. you look at the deals, you negotiate, you look at the underwriting, and in the end, you become the deal maker. That's another part that's very male dominated. So we focus on those two areas. And we also focus on the C-suite. So these are the three things that we do that really prove to be very effective. Right now, a few years ago, we have no one in the C-suite positions at Bulfinch, and now 50% of the C-suites are women. And me, as somebody who's a woman, but also a minority, to be taking that role in the commercial real estate industry, it's really, it's a testament to what we do. If you go to all the commercial real estate companies in Boston area, I challenge you finding another company that has a COO that looks like me. So, and the other two things we're doing, property management, is that one of our really important properties at Kendall Square, that we have a female property manager, we have a female assistant property manager. We also started from really kind of the ground, from tenant coordinator, and we moved them up. So, and then you know why? Because that's really multitude of thought leaders. Because, for example, at that property, we introduced, we invited Berkeley School of Music, the musicians to come to play music for tenants in the summertime. We introduced, yoga class. We introduced, the library for the tenants. So those are the things that, we introduced Green City Grower. We asked people to grow vegetables in the garden area. So these are the things that didn't exist before. Having that really kind of became essential for our industry. And then finally, for the investment acquisition, 3 years ago, we hired 2 analysts from fresh out of school, both outstanding female students. And they're doing so well. And one of them is here, actually. Kate, wave your hand. So 3 years later, so we wanted to really kind of like start from the pipeline to go upwards.
Thank you. So unlike commercial real estate, early childhood is a field that's been predominantly all women. And so we found ourselves not having much of a wage gap because there are very, very few men in the field. But we found ourselves at Charlestown Nursery School really thinking about how we could professionalize this field of early childhood and how we could honor women as professionals and, in many cases, the backbone of society, allowing women and men to work in other fields while their children were very well cared for. But ultimately, we discovered that we needed to redefine this industry norm of tremendously undervaluing and underpaying women in early childhood, just so we could attract and retain the highest quality teachers that we could. So we've really worked with our salary scale that is transparent and open to do quite a few things. Our goal is to pay our early childhood educators on the same scale as the starting wage of Boston Public Schools so that we could ensure it was an attractive role. Historically in Massachusetts, about 35% of early childhood educators are paid below the poverty line. And so, of course, they're working 2 or more jobs just in order to be able to pay rent. We know with the cost of living increases in Massachusetts and across the nation, it is really important that women aren't sort of paying a passion tax because they love the field doesn't mean they should be compensated any less. We all should be able to do what we love and pay our rent. So Charlestown Nursery School has been working to create a really transparent and equitable salary scale that reflects this very, very important work.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Perfect. Awesome. So I would say our efforts are kind of broken down into 2 different areas, with the first being recruitment. So in terms of recruitment, we've really started off. So I just want to also highlight, just as a background for those of you that are not familiar with the architectural field, it's very white, male dominated. And so one of the key things that we wanted to focus on was diversifying the profession. And so part of that includes recruiting and hiring more women as well as staff of color. And so part of our effort has included partnering and fostering relationships with different universities in Boston and throughout the country so that the folks who are interning at our firm aren't specifically coming from one particular university or don't look one particular way. And so we've been able to foster those relationships and really been able to have a diverse pool of interns each semester, which is awesome because depending on where our firm is at and where we're at with our recruitment process, oftentimes those internship opportunities turn into full-time roles, which give folks an opportunity and a foot in the door. Some of the other things that we've done is in terms of making sure that we have a diverse pool of candidates. When we're hiring for roles, we are also typically partnering with recruiting agencies that specialize in recruiting BIPOC and women candidates and really putting the dollars behind that to be able to make sure we have diverse pools of candidates. And then I would say the last effort, in addition to so many more, of course, that we're focused on, is that we make sure that we have a diverse interview panel. And so we're making sure that the folks that are part of the interview process are folks who hold different positions at the firm, and also folks who candidates can relate to, right? So if you're someone that's aspiring to be a project manager, making sure that we're having a project manager who you can talk to in the interview to better know what the experience of project managing at our firm looks like. So that's a little bit on the recruiting end. The other thing is leadership development, which is also part of the issue in terms of the gender and racial wage gap is that that lack of diversity that exists within leadership. And so some of the things that we're doing to address that include our annual performance review process. So it's a 360 process, and the last step in that process is an in-person review with HR, the manager or project manager, and then the employee. And it's really an honest conversation, not necessarily going through a form and ticking off boxes, but really having a conversation around what has the last year been like for you? What are some of the things that have gone well, some of the things that maybe you've struggled with? And then the second part of that is what are some goals for this upcoming year that you want to focus on? And one of the things that's really key and important to me is not only just discussing the goals, just to be able to go through them, but let's talk about some actionable steps that you can take so that you can begin to accomplish those goals, right? So if your goal is to be staffed on a particular kind of project, it's important for you to connect with our principal and director of operations who does the staffing, Diana. So making sure that folks understand that and implement tangible steps that they can take to reach those goals. Some of the other initiatives that we have in the firm include we've created transparency around our promotion process and developed a leadership criteria document, which outlines, hey, here are the criterias and skill sets that we expect for folks in leadership positions so that people understand what that looks like and maybe what are some of the things that I am already, or skill sets that I already have and I'm great at, and what are some areas that I still need to develop in. So we've done that, and that's created transparency around that process, and I also think conversations around folks who are interested in stepping into those leadership positions and how they get there. And then I would say the last is our working groups. So we have a wide array of working groups in the office, and we really communicate and promote them as opportunities for employees to really develop their leadership skills, right? So developing your leadership skills doesn't only happen when you're leading a project or in a leadership role. It can happen as you're leading working groups in the office. You're learning about organizational skills, how to get buy-in from other folks, and how to really push an effort forward. So I would say those are some of the things that we've focused on. So yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Would you say was the most eye-opening of the things you noticed as you started calculating the gaps or lack thereof within each of your organizations? And I'm thoughtful of things like, I know at DeMille Schaefer, their mentorship programs have been key to closing that gap. And I mean, the C-suite increase in women from 0 to 50%, incredible, Pamela. So I'm thoughtful about Was there anything that surprised you in this process as you implemented these programs and partnerships and ideas in order to create more equity in the wage space? And I'll start with you, Pamela.
The surprises, if I think about the surprises, it actually was a pleasant surprise that when we look at the data, we analyze the wages between men and women, we didn't really find much gap. I wish, like Trillium, we're going to pay women 5% more than men. That's a great gap. And I think that what I want to emphasize is that it's a lot easier to recruit a woman or to recruit women in certain positions, but it's going to be very hard to keep them and retain them and make them happy. So we wanted to make sure that first, a couple of things. First, we want to make sure that we gave everybody real work to do. It's not going to be you're going to go to a meeting and then you're one of the only women there and then you ended up taking notes, right? So have you ever experienced that before, right? So no, everybody has real meaningful work. Yesterday I was talking to a colleague who's very interesting data that we hired a person who started last week today, so it's been a week, came from a reputable firm, and then his comments was that, wow, I didn't realize we actually do really kind of like deep down and taking over the entire underwriting process of a new deal. What he did was that in the previous firm that he would be given a certain areas by a senior person, and then he's only going to focus on that area. So we gave people real work to give them a sense of responsibility, a sense of trust and confidence. And then, so that's something, first thing we want to make sure. The second thing is, Leslie was asking the question earlier, right, Leslie, about the promotion. Do you tap someone on the shoulder, or do you actually, everybody has to prove themselves. Everybody has to prove themselves. There's no question about that. But unlike Sun Life, Trillium, or State Street, we don't really publish the roles, but we publish the criteria, like you. And we tell them the structure-wise, if you are AVP, you want to become a VP. These are the skill set we are looking for. This is the kind of responsibility we do. So we're very transparent. And today, the head of marketing woman who's here, the head of legal operation woman who's here, the head of HR is here, the 50% of the acquisition team is women, and the person who's in charge of the entire company's treasurer functions, also a woman who's here. So those are the things we're trying to do, is not so much surprise, but keeping them, retaining them, making them happy. It's something that we wanted really to focus. And then finally, we love to spend time together because we have a sense of belonging. When things work, people want to stay together. They know they belong here and they're proud of where they are. So that's, if anything, I would call that pleasant surprise for us.
We actually don't have much of a wage gap because we don't have any men. And this is the problem with the field of early childhood. Historically, people have been so underpaid, it's hard to attract men and frankly many women into the field. And so we think about sort of redefining the industry standard as compensating well, as I mentioned. And we're also thinking about how that pipeline is really drying up. There are many early childhood lab schools that are closing, many universities that are closing their education programs because it's no longer enticing for young people to go into a field, take on debt, and then graduate knowing that they may just barely be able to make ends meet. So we're fortunate to have lots of partnerships here in the city where we are so grateful for the universities that are doing such important research work, and we welcome visitors into the school to share not only our practice and teaching, but we share our model for how we've been able to offer the salaries that we do. We've made some strategic decisions, so we don't have promotions. Teachers and administrators are paid on the same salary scale. We truly believe in honoring teachers as professionals, and in order to make the budget work, we've had to say we're all at this even level. They're the ones doing the important work with children day in and day out, and that's been really transformative in terms of our P&L sheet.
I would say one of the things that was surprising for me, so I've been at DeMillis Schaefer for 2.5 years now, and one of the things that was really surprising to me when I joined the team was just the level of collaboration and amazing culture that we had there. And so I think one of the things that we've done just in terms of policy processes is that we've really built a lot of that around the culture that we have. And really, it's a place where folks enjoy working, genuinely enjoy coming. And so one of the key things that's been important to us is to build and strengthen that culture. So to me, I think one of the things that I would say to folks who are out there that's really important is figure out what are the strengths in your organization and your culture and your structure, and really build upon that, in addition to some of the other efforts that you guys are starting to spearhead, because I think there's a lot of value in pulling from the strengths that already exist in your organization. So.
Excellent. When you are, speaking to your staff, post these implementations in terms of you're already in place, you're seeing successes, that's why you're here being honored. What do you think is the most significant feedback that you've received since implementing these measures to create more equity in terms of wages? And I'll start with you again.
Transparency. We make it known. Our marketing team does a fantastic job to promote this, and we let the world know, we let the team know, we let the internal people know. So. And then also, because of the sense of belonging, we all want us to succeed, right? So when we have these mandates put out, we all work hard to drive the results. And so it's really kind of like 100% buy-in from the company.
Our teachers appreciate our advocacy work because not only are we working to support them, but we're working to support all teachers in the field. We work with a lot of early childhood centers and schools about changing and shifting their model. So I think they really appreciate that advocacy. And then as high as our salaries are, we wish they were higher. They deserve a lot more than they're getting. And so we are always thinking strategically about how we can get them higher. Unlike K-12, 0 to 5 is a market-based system typically rates are based on what young parents can pay. And so there's a wonderful initiative here in Massachusetts called Common Start, which is working to make 0 to 5 free and accessible in the same way that K-12 is, which ultimately would support families, of course, but also would support early childhood educators, hopefully drawing more into the field. And then another piece that we offer for teachers is the opportunity for them to be educational entrepreneurs. Again, we wish the salaries were higher than they currently are, and if teachers need to supplement, we offer them the opportunity in the space in the building in the summer to offer workshops for teachers. So they do teacher training, institutes, and have lots of opportunities if they need to supplement. But we're always thinking strategically for how we can increase salaries and increase benefits. Our next goal is to get to 100% health insurance coverage, including deductibles.
Similar, one of ours is definitely, we've heard feedback around the appreciation for transparency. So the transparency that exists in our processes, and just making sure that folks are aware of what's happening at the firm from a recruiting standpoint, from a developing folks into leadership standpoint. And I would say the second is really creating communities in the sense of belonging. I think that that has been really important for our staff. We do things like monthly celebrations for different cultures and different backgrounds to make sure that we're celebrating the wide array of communities and backgrounds that our staff come from. We make sure that we have, as I've mentioned, working groups and communities that folks can participate in. And so I would say those are kind of the two key feedbacks we've received. So.
All right, so now we're going to move into the Q&A portion of this panel. Any questions for our panelists here? Oh, come on, there we go.
I'm the Assistant Vice President for Diversity and Inclusion at Boston University. I tell normal people that I'm a cultural climatist, and this question is really for Katie. I feel like you're in a really influential position to change culture and not just pay. And so I wonder if you can incentivize, especially our young men, to go into your field, and especially men of color to go into your field.
That is a wonderful goal and certainly something that we would love to work towards and are working towards. And I think the way to do that is by increasing salaries, right? It has to be a field that is lucrative enough for people to want to study early childhood when they're young, right? Just entering college. And then to be able to get a master's degree, you have to be able to pay those loans back. And so I think a lot of it is in compensation. We also, of course, talk a lot about conditions and making sure it's a wonderful place to work that people want to come to in a supportive environment with flexible schedules and all of those things. But at the end of the day, I think that it's only going to change if we can, I guess first we have to reimagine the view of the child. We are a research-driven school, so I'll just share that 90% of the brain is formed before age 5. It is the most impactful time in a human's lifespan, but historically, we have thought as a society of early childhood educators as babysitters. And so we have such an opportunity to really rewrite that narrative and say, actually, 0 to 5 is the most important and most critical time in any human's life. And it should be the highest trained and the highest educators and the highest compensated teachers working with that age group. But until we really have societal changes around the view of the child and then the view of early childhood educators, it's going to be hard to do that. It's going to be hard to attract men into the field. And so, there's lots of different sort of initiatives and ideas around how to encourage, and there's sort of one-year programs and fellowships. But I think ultimately there's going to need to be some major cultural and societal shifts around how we think of young children and what they deserve.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for sharing the transformative work you're doing. My name is Kim Willingham. I'm the executive director of a nonprofit here in Boston called the Boston Debate League. And Cipriana, you talked about organizational culture. I'm interested in particular how you and Pamela and your organizations in industries that are predominantly male-dominated, what type of supports or intentional conversations you have with women to help them to acclimate and navigate those types of environments.
I would say, first off, it's making sure that we're being intentional about giving the women in the organization opportunities to kind of develop into those leadership roles. And so it includes having them project manage on projects, as well as also having other efforts like our Women in Design working group, where it's really a safe space for women to come to discuss some of their concerns and issues, and also figure out how do we move women forward in the profession. So I would say those are some of the ways that we've done it. One of the other things that I think, to me, and I would say across the board also for the firm, is really key and important, is that representation matters, right? So seeing someone in a leadership role, I think helps folks to be able to see that is possible for them. And so we have Diana, who is one of our principals and leaders at the firm, who's a woman. And I think that that has been inspiring for other women in the firm to see that they can rise into that leadership role. And then, of course, we have a large percentage of women also in our leadership positions. And we typically will include them in interview processes. We'll have them also serve as mentors to be able to really help cultivate the next group of women leaders to come.
And at Bulfinch, one thing that we did is we created a women resource group that, that everybody is free to attend, and we participate together, and we love spending time together. We went to a Boston Ballet dress rehearsal, and we went to Nutcrackers, and so that's one thing. The second thing is, earlier, I think Catherine asked a question about promotion. Wanted to share two, stats with you that in 2023, the 75% of people who got promoted at Bulfinch are women, and in 2024 so far, as of today, 55% of people who got promoted are women. So those are the things we really try to do. That that's a message. But we, again, everybody has to prove themselves. It's not we just, because somebody is a woman, that we promote them. We promote somebody because they did a fantastic job and they add value and we appreciate them. And we think that they have a long future with us, and that's how we did it.
Well, I mean, we could talk all day long about this subject, but I'd like to thank you all for being a part of the panel, and thank you so much for listening. I'm Crystal Haynes, your moderator, and I'm going to send it back over.
So we're almost done. I am going to say one thing, panelists, winners, if at the end of this, if you could come up and we could take one picture all together, that would be wonderful. But in our closing remarks, just thank you all for coming today. Please keep fighting the fight. We saw a real difference in the gender wage gap measurement this year. And we hope to see it disappear altogether the next time we do it, which is next year. I also would love to ask all of you to talk to your colleagues at other organizations that are not a part, who have not signed the Talent Compact, and let me know who they are and let us talk with them. The BWWC will continue to bring you new ideas to solve the problem of gender and racial wage gaps, and hope that a few of them will make a difference. So have a great rest of your day and a wonderful summer.